Welcome to the meeting of the Beaufort County Board of Education Finance Committee meeting of October 13th, 2022. We are conducting this in a hybrid mode. We are in the conference room E of the district office, and there are a number of members, Dr. Wisniewski and Mr. Sturbiger online. See any other board members? And request for public comments. Participation will be accepted between 4 p.m. and 4:30 by sending an email with your name, phone number, and topic to Robin Cushenberry at beaufortk12.scm.us. So let's call, the meeting is called to order, and we'd like to start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes.
Second.
I move that we approve tonight's agenda.
It's been moved by Dr. Ross and seconded by Mr. Campbell to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Open the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Wisniewski, aye.
He's going to say that.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Robin, were there any public comments?
No, sir.
Okay. I need to have approval of the minutes of the September 8th, 2022 meeting. Can you put that up on the screen, please?
Why don't you read it?
Okay.
Meeting?
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 8th, 2022 meeting?
Make a motion to
A second?
A second?
Okay, great. Dr. Wisniewski seconds it. Now, is there a discussion? You want to take some time to look at it? Or you just now got it?
So the ones you read at the meeting for October 4th.
This is October 4th.
No, when you did, that was your summary when you did the finance, those are the meeting minutes I had sent to you for.
Yes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none?
I mean, there's a couple of misspelled words in the very future agenda topics.
Okay.
Discussion review of what has occurred and salary increases and bonuses. That means
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yes.
that's
Okay. Enterprise, yeah, the enterprise report date. Zone enterprise report. Was that?
it says missing your presented date, just as duplicated.
Oh, it's presented done. Duplicate. See that? First line. Presented done.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Wisniewski, aye.
And I'm abstaining, I wasn't at this meeting.
Okay, so it's 2-0-1.
And I'm with with corrections.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the monthly $100,000 report. And you can see from the executive summary that most of it is our annual renewal of different contracts. Is there anything else you would like to highlight, Ms. Crosby?
The only thing I would mention is, the first on the list is the Amazon total, and as expected, with our new procurement code, we're seeing a decline in the Amazon purchases. So last year we had over 100,000. At this point, spending in the month of August, this year in the month of August, we had less than, so it was 72,000. So with the change in the procurement code requiring us to go with state contract vendors primarily, unless a significant reduction in cost, then that will have a shift toward other state contract vendors.
You can see the shift in staples.
Increasing, yes.
Increasing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Any other questions? Rachel, Dr. Wisniewski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I only have, I think, 2 questions, and that's in regard to, and Tanya, I really do like the report having the prior year's amount on there. I think that's very helpful for us in looking at how these things might be changing. My main questions are in regard to the Project Lead the Way total from last year to this year being double, I think it looked like. It was on the first page, Raman. Just those that going down the line, any of those that saw, a 50% or more increase, if you could explain a little bit about some of those, I think that would be helpful.
So this year, it does state, instructional supplies and online course registration and participation fees. Last year was just instructional materials, not the software online courses. So I'd have to get some assistance from Dr. Stratus's team to, kind of give us some guidance on.
I believe they've expanded it.
Yeah, I think there was some more schools even as well that was.
We are spending some funds on ESSER, some projects on ESSER as well. So again, that would take spending even higher if we were doing that in both funding sources. So we'll check in on that one. And again, so some of the others that have increased, like Ajax Building Company, for example, have construction this year, but that company did not do business with us last year at this time. So we did switch. We have generally 4 major contractors, general contractors, and they were not the ones that were performing last year's projects. Arthur Gallagher, our risk management. That's a timing thing. One was paid last year. It was paid in the month of October, so it could be, the timing of when the payments are made that can cause that. So, for the most part,
Wendy Cartledge joined the meeting.
I think for the most part, the description we provide generally gives that information, but we can certainly check into the Project Lead the Way a little more instructional areas.
Yeah, I just was looking for a little bit more on some of them, like Dominion, for example. I think if I'm reading it correctly, is saying that this year there's 2 accounts that are being paid as opposed to last year where there was only 1 account number being paid, because that's double 2. Is that accurate?
Most likely we're paying for 2 months in the same
2
month. So once at the very beginning of the month, the timing of them just hit where we happen to pay 2 in 1 month. So the next report you receive will probably be have a 0 in it or much less, and it'll go the other direction. So
does that happen often for utilities?
It does. It depends on how the calendar flows and when the due date is. So often we have to hurry and get a payment made before the the due date, and it happens to, be paid early in order to meet that deadline. So it is pretty common, yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
How about the Riverview Charter School? Went up.
Yes, Riverview Charter Schools payment went up because our tax revenues increased this fiscal year. And as a result of that, our per pupil expenditure district-wide increased, and then when multiplied by Riverview's student numbers, so their total allocation has gone up $2 million this school year. And so that can be seen in our financial reports as well and the budget. So we did indicate that there would be a significant increase in that line item in the budget this year. So it's all about tax revenues and state, local and state revenues that we generate.
Any other questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve?
So that's it, yeah, okay. I move that the finance committee approve the, you can say consolidated
$100,000.
consolidated report, and it's gonna come to the consent agenda, or what?
Yes. And
place on the consent agenda for the October 18, 2022 business meeting of the board.
Robin, to put that up. Have a second, by the way.
Yeah,
Aye. Yeah, thank you.
Motion that the finance committee approve the monthly 100K report and place on the October 18th board meeting consent agenda.
Yeah, and I said this consolidated report.
Consolidated report.
Earl, second motion.
Okay. Is there any any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Wisniewski, aye.
I think so. Earl, did you say aye?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So can I ask you a question? So this is the one that will be the consent agenda, and this will just be their
Attachment.
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 I put them both in the consent
Yeah.
agenda.
Okay. Alright.
Okay, you can post it. Okay, the next one is the monthly transparency report. Don't see.
No, I don't think we print the
That's
transparency. 84 pages.
84 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We should. Remember now, we scroll through that.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Start with that first page, 84 pages.
And that's the one we didn't put the link, we put the whole document, but we didn't print out the whole.
Okay.
I think the purpose of the consolidated $100,000 report was to point out some of the largest items that are
Right.
in the transparency
Right.
report.
Yeah.
So really that kind of helps to, minimize the,
Yeah, it's consolidated.
conversation,
It's
yes.
consolidated.
Help facilitate that. But it is information directly from that report.
Let's add that to the motion. I will go line by line. And if I see a problem, I will ask to bring it off the consent agenda. And put it in. Okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, so do you want a separate motion or just?
No, let's.
Rachel's hands up.
Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, I was just gonna make a comment about some of the content. You guys go ahead. If you're ready for me, I can.
Sure, go ahead.
It's mostly just a statement and probably something that requires further discussion down the road. I know we are lessening the amount of purchases on Amazon and purchasing through Staples instead. One of my main concerns with some of the things that were being purchased on Amazon have to do with any type of furnishings that are purchased on there. I'm not sure if I shared with some of the other board members, but there aren't really any standards in regard to what kind of furnishings are placed into classroom settings. And so there was some articles that came out about chairs that were actually malfunctioning in a classroom that were purchased off of Amazon. So my concern is that I want us to be cautious about furnishing purchases that come off of there, as well as just making smart purchases, because I don't know how regulated that is. And I worry about the safety of some of those items being in the classroom. But that can be a discussion at another time, or perhaps, if you need more info, I can certainly share.
Discuss me.
The Carol Crutchfield and Freddie Lawton are in charge of furniture for the district, and they do have standards for schools. I don't know specifically all the details about that, but they would have a lot of information about it. So I'm not sure how to facilitate that, but they might be able to provide some additional information about what our standards are, because they do make sure that
Right.
they comply with.
But Dr. Wisniewski, are you talking about perhaps a principal going and ordering on Amazon some furnishings?
Yeah, if it's a principal purchasing furnishings, and when I say standards, I don't mean like the district doesn't have standards. I mean that the industry itself does not have standards. You have standards for office furniture and things like that, but the children's classroom furnishings, to my knowledge, there is no set standards. I think the only state that has any is maybe California. So I just want to make sure that if there is something being purchased off Amazon that's going to be in the classroom, that it does go through, Ms. Crutchfield and Mr. Lawton, and we're just keeping a good eye on things. That's all.
Okay. We will, we'll have a conversation about it with them and and come up with some ideas for how to communicate, what to communicate with our bookkeepers, and they're sort of the gatekeeper of purchases in the schools, so we can help facilitate that and get information from the facilities folks, so we can work on that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't feel comfortable without going through this. We didn't have any time. So I'd like to just have it put on the agenda. And by the time the agenda, put it on the finance committee agenda for the finance report. I will have time to review it before the meeting and open it up for the full board. So that.
Do you want me to print you out the 84 pages so that you would have the hard copy? That's the consolidated report.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is 45.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like if you could do that for me and I could get it maybe tomorrow or Monday, I will do that. I just don't feel comfortable without somebody going and looking line by line. And I can move it. Okay. So, you need a motion to add it to the agenda? For the full board?
I mean, if you want it under the report instead of it going under consent agenda.
Yeah, right, it would go under the,
Your report,
right, finance committee report.
so we would need a motion.
Okay.
I don't
Because you can bring
No,
up whatever.
I mean, you can bring up where,
Right.
that's fine. It just won't go on the consent agenda.
Exactly.
Right. So if you get that to me, I'll go through it. Okay, next item is board monthly budget. Put that on the screen for Dr. Wisniewski. Don't see anybody overspending.
Yeah, exactly.
And the biggest percentage is the organization membership dues, which I guess we're all paid up, I hope.
Yes, sir. Rachel's hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was a holdover from before.
Okay.
I did kind of have a question though, similar to and along the lines of our membership fees. I know that the South Carolina School Board Association departed from the National School Board Association, and I think they're now, I cannot remember the new acronym, but I think there's two separate national organizations at this point, is my understanding. And
Right.
I know that we get membership into South Carolina, and I've been getting emails for the NSBA National Conference, but I haven't gotten anything for, pardon?
We are not a member of the national, 2 boards ago, because of the cost, did not pay for our membership. So no, we're not a member of the national. We're only a member of the South Carolina.
Right. I guess my question is there's going to be 2 different national conferences this year. And I know in the past, the school board had attended some of the NSBA ones. So I was just wondering if we were going to get information or see anything on the other one. I think it starts with a C. It's like a coalition or something.
Yeah, exactly, that's exactly.
It's CUBE. CUBE is a part that comes out of the National Association. So they're like a sub, they're a part of the national, but they're a subgroup of the national.
No, I think this is something different.
Is that CUBE?
No, I don't think so. I'll try to pull it up because I actually found out about it through work. And so I had seen that they were having it. I believe it's made up of like Florida, South Carolina, and a lot of the southeastern school boards.
The regional conference? Because Earl has attended the regional ones before.
No, this was, it's the new coalition of school boards that deviated away from NSBA.
Exactly. And they like just made up their, I guess you'd say, their rules and all that. Yeah, and so Scott Price with the SCSBA would know because the SCSBA is going to be part of that.
Yeah,
So
it's down
or
in,
not part of the NBS, whatever national.
yeah, this is something different, I think, and something relatively new. So I just wanted to make sure that we were all signed up to get whatever emails we're supposed to get for that, since that's now our affiliation, I believe.
Will you send me that information, please?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Thank you.
Is there any other issues from the board, monthly board budget? Right here, a motion to approve.
Sure. I approve the monthly board budget and we'll, or have the finance committee approve it and place it on the consent agenda for October 18, 2022 business meeting.
Have a second? Second from Mr. Campbell. Get it up.
Association Finance Committee recommend the approval of the board monthly budget meeting and place on the October 18th, 22 consent agenda.
Any discussion?
It's not meeting. Board.
Board monthly budget. Take the meeting out.
Report. But I still see, oh, now it just fixed.
Just a second.
Yeah. That looks good.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Wisniewski, aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Next item is the ESSER update. Ms. Crosby.
Yes, sir. All right, good evening, everyone. This is our inaugural discussion of the ESSER update with the Finance Committee. So we have done something a little different this time to provide sort of to address a few of the concerns that were expressed by the board and to give a different look at the ESSER funds. So as you know, the ESSER funds are the elementary and secondary schools emergency relief funds from the federal government. Initially provided, there was a small pot that was distributed in March of 2020, then a little bit larger one the following year, and so on. So we are in a position where we have basically two remaining funds. But for purposes of this report, we included ESSER 1 as well, which just completed. So the purpose of this ESSER dashboard is a couple of things. One, to give a visual look at some of the key elements of the program. Two, to provide some projections to show you the patterns of spending and how we will meet our goal of spending it all by the deadlines. And then also to combine all the activities of the grants into one budget, one set of spending, and the remaining balances by major categories. So that's what this dashboard is intended to do, to kind of simplify and provide more of an executive summary type look at the ESSER funding. So I don't know if this will replace the other documents, which I've also provided, or this is the work of, all of this is the work of Ms. Matson and her team, and with help from other folks in other departments. And so I want to commend her for a lot of, and I think it looks amazing, actually. Very excited about it. But we've provided the format that's always been in place, just to make sure that you saw it the same way you've seen it in the past. And if you decide you would prefer just the summary, that's fine. Or we can continue to provide whichever reports the board or the committee prefers. So if we can take some time to kind of go through, we can. I can point out a few things of this document that basically is the same information that's provided in the narrative executive summary, but just in a graphical, visual kind of way. So the top left-hand corner quadrant of the dashboard is the total ESSER expenditures. So that represents three pots of money, ESSER 1, 2, and 3. And so basically we have spent 46% of those three sources. The first source is ESSER 1 is about a year old. So that's about 12 months of spending in each of these categories. It represents about $36 million essentially spent in one year. There's 80 million total in the sources. And so as we break it down, as we move to the upper right-hand quadrant, you see ESSER 1, and that one was about 4.9, about $5 million, and that is 100% spent at this point. So that deadline was September 30th, 2022. And those activities have been 100% expended. The next category is ESSER 2. And those have been, again, we've been spending for about 12 months. Those expire in September of 2023, and those are at 50% spent. One of the things I want to mention, and we'll see it again in one of the other graphs, is that the recruiting and retention bonus that the board voted on of $6 million will be spent in December of this year. So with that spending, we're going to be at 76% spent by the end of this calendar year. So it's for ESSER 2. So that's going to jump up very quickly within the next couple of months that you see it or it won't be the next month's report, but in the next month or two, you will see a big jump in that category. Then below that is ESSER 3. We were allocated that 12 months ago. It has 2 more years, so 24 more months. So we're about a third of the way through the grant period, and we're 38% spent of those funds. So, again, ESSER 3 has about $31.5 million of remaining expenditures that are planned and committed on the various activities. In the bottom left-hand quadrant is a line graph, which combines ESSERs 2 and 3. And these are talking about the future. This is a future projection of spending. So the left-hand axis represents the blue line. The blue line is the quarterly projections of what we anticipate to spend between now and the end of the grant in the first quarter, January or July through September of 2025, or it's 2024, but it's fiscal year 25. So the blue line is very jagged, and that's because we're going to pay a $6 million recruiting and retention bonus. And the next month, we're going to have next few quarters, we're going to have relatively steady spending. And then you're going to see jumps in other time periods where we expect to have construction completed, say in the summer months, or spending as we near the end of the grant on the final software renewals. Any additional technology devices or major purchases will be completing during that during the end of the 2024 fiscal year, and as we near toward the end of the grant. So on the right-hand axis represents the green line. And the green line is a projection of what the remaining budget will be as we go from now until the end of the grant period. And so we expect to go to zero. We really believe it's going to be well before, a few months before. Our goal is to be finished a few months before the September period. We want all the invoices, invoices to come in, be processed, and so on. And so that shows a demonstration of what we project to spend and how we're going to make sure that all funds are expended. And then finally, the far bottom right-hand corner is really the major categories of our approved activities. So we've lumped them in. You'll see the biggest category is learning loss. So that's a multitude of things. You have after-school programs, summer school programs, tutoring programs during the day, and other instructional services that are provided to students. And then you'll see mental health and technology, teacher quality and retention, those sorts of things in there. So that provides the budget that was originally allocated. of ESSER 2 and 3, that 73 million doesn't have the ESSER 1 included in this one. So these are ESSER 2 and 3 activities of the grants that are remaining, how much we've spent and what's remaining to be expended. So just lastly, I just want to say, Ms. Matson and her staff are tracking these and monitoring each expenditure to make sure, as every expenditure comes through, they're tracking them to make sure they're in compliance with what we wrote in the grant, what the specific activity calls for, and to make sure that it's within an approved activity. But also, she's continuing to meet quarterly with each of the contact people. So we have a chart that every budget item, we have over 200 budget items within this grant, individual items, and each one has a contact person. And those contact people meet with her quarterly, and she monitors that progress. We push it along when we need to, and we make sure that the spending is happening timely, or we're notified of any delays that may occur for supply chain issues or staffing. And oftentimes there are shifts, for example, with a nurse, we may not be able to fill a full-time position, but we have a contracted position. So that may require a little shift around from one category to the other, but still within the same activity. So, but there is over a dozen people that she meets with on a quarterly basis to make sure that that happens. So, so I think that for the most part, it covers the update and all the both executive summaries really. And so I'll be happy to take any comments or questions.
I like this. Yeah. It's simplified.
Yeah.
Comments from David Sturger.
Thank you, Dick. Yeah, I just want to tell you that this is really good. Of course, I'm used to seeing things like this, so it really resonates for me. But this is such an improvement over trying to read the other stuff line by line and constructing these visuals in our mind. This is just great, and I certainly commend the people that put this together.
Dr. Wisniewski, you have any comments?
Yeah, I was trying to get my little electronic hand up. Thank you. Thank you very much for y'all's hard work on this. I think this really is a nice one pager that we can show to our constituents and explains in a nice visual way and also detailed way of how we are expending those dollars. I know it's been one of the major questions that I get from people is how are you guys spending it and are you focused in the areas they think are most important? So I really appreciate it. I'm going to share it. And I also, the only question I have about it is in regard to the indirect costs area. That's probably going to be the next question that I get from someone is what is an indirect cost? So I don't know if we need to have a universal descriptor of what that is. But I'm sure that's going to be the next question I get. So I'm just trying to preempt it. I know we've talked about it before, but.
Well, I can start if Ms. Matson has she'll probably have a better description of it, but basically it is the overhead costs of the staff, the services or supplies that are needed, mostly the staffing that's needed to administer the grant. So it's a reimbursement from the grant and it's a transfer to the general fund. It becomes a revenue source to the general fund. And so it is available to the district if needed, and we have up to 20%. 20% is available to be in this grant to be transferred. We have the option to transfer it or not to. We could expend it on the other programs. And so if I might point out, the green line actually takes us as committing more than funds that are it would take us below zero. It's actually $3.4 million below zero. So the commitments we've made, we believe we could have savings in multiple categories, but if we should expend more than the grant amount, we can use reduce the amount of indirect cost that would flow to the general fund and be able to utilize it more on the activities. So that indirect cost is going to be our safety net for any activities that we wish to expend more in and fund in that manner. So we have the option to utilize it on activities or move to the general fund as a revenue source to support operations. But basically it's overhead and administrative costs of staffing that are paid in the general fund.
Thank you for that. And you answered what was my follow-up question about can we use it in other areas that we might want to later. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. The only question, follow on to that, because I've marked the same thing about indirect cost, is if it's staffing, I hope that doesn't mean that when this is over with, we fire somebody. Or does it mean?
Well, there are a number of positions that are funded in ESSER funds.
Right.
So there will be some tough decisions that will need to be made. There will be requests to add people into the general fund budget in that fiscal 2025 school year. And some may not be needed any longer because we put positions in to help administer the grant or administrate a program that would may no longer continue, and we wouldn't have the funding to continue, for example. So there will be some that will go away. There may be some that will shift to the general fund as well.
So that's an HR issue.
Yes.
And I want to be sensitive to
Yes.
that issue.
Absolutely.
We need to not, because I've seen this happen when federal funds dry up, and someone gets a thing on their desk saying, oh, sorry. And we don't do that here, right?
We will
I'm
plan
talking
accordingly.
notices
Yes.
and everything else.
Oh, yes.
No surprises.
That's right.
The employees are fully aware
Yes.
of what the issue would be. That's being sensitive and responsible to our employees.
Yes.
Can I add that first? Anybody on this grant?
Yeah.
Actually, every 6 months, they sign that they know that they're 100% paid with this grant. So they will do that every 6 months, call us semi-annual. So
That's exactly
Okay.
kind of what I wanted to know. Dr. Wazewski, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think that was one of my questions when we first started looking at using the funds for staff is that in their contract, and is that very explicitly explained that they are funded through the grant? And Tanya did say that was the case back then. So thank you.
I also want to echo Mr. Strivinger's comments. I've served on some boards and reported to some boards. This is what boards get. This is really, really good. It's one page. We have limited attention spans, but yet this covers things. Then ask to have this as backup
okay.
for the specifics. We still need to have this as a backup. But this is the kind of report, in my mind, is what should be presented to the full board and during, either during your report or during the finance committee report. I commend you. There's a lot of work that went into this.
That helped. But does it answer the questions that you have, though? That would be my question. Is it answering your concerns and your questions?
Yeah,
for that?
right.
If there's anything to add, we can do that as we go along there too.
Right. But here's one of the important things to me as well is I don't want to waste $1 of federal money. And that takes really meticulous planning because you've got to spend it and have it completed before the term of the grant expires. And so that's not easy work, especially when you're buying complex, big stuff, because it comes in pieces, it's not all there, and you can get in trouble by the money's gone away, but the bills are still coming in. So when I see that's really good. Yes, Dr. Wisniewski?
Yeah, I was just going to say, to answer her question about, does this answer all our questions? I think this, as well as the other document that has the fund transfers, that seems to answer a lot of my questions. And then I think the only other thing that people might ask is, under the activity types or the categoricals, what is encompassed in each of those, and kind of similar to the indirect costs questions of what does that encompass? I don't know if we need to have maybe a legend that explains what is encompassed in those categoricals for the public to understand. But otherwise, I think this is fabulous, and I think it's very comprehensive and a great tool that we can use to explain to others what we've been doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wisniewski. So now how do we dispose of this? Do we have this be a monthly report that we look at and recommend approval? Do we need to have a motion to approve this? Or is this simply information?
It's information.
Information. So would you then provide that information in your report? Or should it be in the finance committee's report?
Well, I think by bringing it to the finance committee, it was an opportunity to go vet all the details of it and then take to the full board. So, how
do you want to do it?
I don't think it requires a vote.
No, I don't think so either. But how do we?
I think having a conversation about it in the finance committee, I would prefer that, so that we're able to get into the details
before the full board sees it.
Yes.
You kind of proof it, if you will. Give you some
And give you an opportunity
Right.
to ask any detailed questions, and
Okay.
then we'll have those ready for the full board meeting.
So this is going to be put on the agenda for the next board meeting to be given to the full board in your report.
Would it come out of committee report?
It should come out of committee report, since this is where we
For
moved
the
it to.
for the first time?
Well, I think you took a vote to have this come to the committee.
Yes.
So this is gonna be every month in the committee. So if you want, so this will come out of your report. So wherever you want it on the agenda, that's where this committee says that you wanna place.
Or we can do it in superintendent's report.
Right,
We
so
put that
we'll
on
put
the
it back.
superintendent's report, and I can.
What's the will of the committee?
I would say, let's have it under your report, because that's what we agreed upon
Okay.
with
And
the board.
then discuss
And then-
with the full board where it goes?
Or you can, have it in the documents under the finance committee report, and
Yeah.
Tanya and Denise can speak to it. if
Sure.
we need to.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Once you get credit.
Yeah.
Cause there may be something come up later on.
Yeah, okay. Okay, is there any objection to doing that, Dr. Wisniewski?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Wonderful work. Okay, ESSER budget transfers is the next item.
Yes, sir. As I think Dr. Wisniewski mentioned earlier, we have the budget transfers as well. And so the budget transfers were took some thought. Again, I give all the credit to Denise Matson here. She is the mastermind behind the format here. Budget amendments for ESSER funds are unique from what you would believe the typical budget transfer would be. So they are all electronic, first of all, and we don't have the ability to print anything to show you a document of the actual thing that was submitted to the state. And they actually come in two forms. There is one that's the normal budget transfer, the typical budget transfer you would think about, that we would move. For example, the nurse example that I provided earlier, we put budgets in ESSER for nursing salaries and benefits. But due to a shortage of nursing candidates, we had to outsource that and contract the service. So that would require a budget transfer from salaries and benefit categories over to a service set category. So that is one type of transfer. However, that is within the approved activity, so there is no need to get permission to move it from one activity to another. So the second type of approval or budget amendment that's required from the State Department is a movement of funding from one activity to another. And that requires justification, documentation, and so on. And then they have to review the item, look to see if it's acceptable in compliance with the, and reasonable, and then would approve or deny any particular budget amendment of that sort. A good example might be the recruiting and retention bonus. That was not originally planned as an activity within the ESSER funds, but prior to the board's vote, Ms. Mattson contacted the State Department in advance of the vote to make sure that it would be approved activity. They outlined what requirements we would need to comply with their guidelines, and then said, if you can document these things and demonstrate that you have met these requirements, then yes, we will approve it. And so at that point, we came to the board and said the State Department has okayed it as long as we meet these criteria. So that would be an example of a different type of budget amendment. So the way in which Ms. Mattson was able to prepare this document was to basically take the original budget by activity for combined with ESSER 2 and 3 funds, and then look at the current budgets of ESSER 2 and 3 as of June of 2022. And then the differences represent the total amendments by activity that have been made thus far. And so primarily, you'll see, I'll direct your attention on page 1 at the bottom, almost the bottom. Indirect costs was originally 15.9 million. It is currently 10.6 million. We've reduced indirect costs 5.3 million so far. And 2 of the major categories that's been amended to go to are at the top 2 items on that page: dual modality and the recruiting and retention bonus. So that's the primary areas that you're going to see major changes there. And those types of things, we would, that would alter the budgets in those categories. And, we had to have approval for the State Department to be able to add those activities in the budget. So, but that generally describes sort of how she came up with these particular, this format.
In other words, this is a 2-page audit, right? Mm-hmm. It's where the money is shifted so that we can watch and see how it's being done. But I assume that everything on here, when it goes on here, it means you have gotten approval from the state.
These are our activities, and they're kind of grouped together and squished, because if you actually look at our activity list, it's 4 pages long individual. So it's like, I took it because it's the same words y'all were used to seeing in the reports. I tried to keep the words the same on it. So yeah, it's, when you have 6 million come up, you've got to go find 6 million somewhere else, because it was all budgeted to start with. So that's how we just kind of moved there. We knew we didn't hire everybody the first year, so the next one's some salaries, and that I knew we had some savings in there. So and some of it, if you see, we move from let's say maybe from tutoring to after school. I mean, it's just it's in the learning loss bucket, but it it might have not even been a true amendment, but it would have been a change in what we actually had for that activity there. Because it was in the same learning loss, same grant bucket, and it was just needed more over here than over there. So,
Maybe more after school than during the day.
yeah, that, a lot of that. So in summer and.
Comments or questions from the board member or the committee members? Dr. Boyle?
I'm just curious, so like when you approach the state, like you did for the, retention recruitment bonus, like the 6 million, how quick is their turnaround time with you?
It was a quick on that. So we talked on the phone with the guy in charge first,
Yeah.
and then we actually submitted the request in writing, and it's probably, and then once they give us the yes on that, then we go in and have to do some budget moves on an electronic thing, but I'd say a week. We had it within a week. I think that's even over. They've been so responsive to us.
Yeah.
Which I was surprised because that's been a touchy one with these grants there, but it's not. But now if it's an activity that's already there and it's just a moving from supplies to something else, I mean, it happens within a day. They say approved, move forward. So
Okay.
that's how it's been. Now, critical people left, so I don't know
Yeah,
what it's gonna be like this year.
that's good. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
I don't have anything for her. Robin, will both of these reports go over to
Yes,
board
sir.
docs?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Wisniewski, do you have any questions or comment?
Surprisingly, none.
David, do you have any questions or comments?
Nope. Again, I'm impressed. I think this tells us everything we need to know.
Liaison.
Mr. Smith, do you have any questions or comments?
No, sir. Thanks for asking. No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I think this kind of goes with the previous panel the same way. Again, my compliments. This is good work.
I feel like I've made progress.
And here's another thing that I saw that I was intrigued about. You want to talk about summary of employee benefits and compensation increases.
So I believe this item was requested by Dr. Wisniewski, actually. And it was something that we were thinking about already. And as soon as I heard that, I started jotting things down on a sheet of paper in little chicken scratch, and I was going to type it out nicely for Ms. Hamlin here, and I didn't. I took a picture of it and texted it to her, and she made this beautiful document out of what looked like a lot of chicken scratch. So I give all the credit to her for the format and the research needed to get to this point. So she expanded from well more than what I had anticipated by adding, 4 fiscal years. And I think it was very important to do that because we've done a lot of great things with the funding over the last 4 years. So we're providing 4 fiscal years. The left-hand major column is compensation, whether that's teachers, support staff, professional administrators, and so on, with projected costs. And those are typically budgeted costs, or they may have been, they're probably projected costs in the current year and then actual costs or budgets in the prior year. And then we put a category of stipends, bonuses, leave, and other items, whether they are monetary or non-monetary, we included them. I'm going to start from the bottom. And I do want to point out that in yellowish orange there, Mr. Murphy actually pointed out to me, he said, Tanya, some of these are state mandated. They weren't, above and beyond. And it was difficult to separate the two. So I just highlighted those areas that may have been fully or partially state mandated. Dual modality bonuses was an example. They mandated that we do it, but we probably did well more than most districts did in terms of that. We were fortunate to be able to do that. So I'm not going to go through every line item of this, but 2020, some highlights were a 4% cost of living increase, an annual step increase for all staff, really. Big ticket items that year was a 10% salary increase for bus drivers, and we moved the max step for teachers, I think for all staff, from 23 to 24 years. And that was the year we embarked on a first of 3 phases of athletic stipend increases. So our coaches were able to benefit from for the first year. That was at the request of Dr. Berg, actually. So we started phase 1 of the athletic coaches increases. The next year was COVID, and we all ended up with a continuing resolution. So we had the same exact budget as the prior year. So nothing happened that year, but the next year was a catch-up year. So not only did we do the current step, but we did the previous year's step as well. And we restored a step that was missed for teachers back in 2012. So we did almost 3 steps for teachers that year. And then step increases, 2 years worth of step increases for classified, administrative, and professional as well, 2% for them, and 5% for bus drivers. And then at the end of the year, you'll recall we did the 3% retroactive cost of living because we had some savings in the general fund. So we were able to give all employees another 3%, which ended up being, after talking with a teacher, she said it was basically another paycheck, an extra paycheck for me, is what she said. And I was like, wow, that's kind of powerful right at the end of the school year. That year we did the $1,000 at the beginning of the year, or near the beginning of the year, with the $1,000 pandemic bonus. And then the teachers received dual modality bonuses in the first semester and the second semester of that year with ESSER funds. And we started free mental health supports and childcare. And then we actually implemented phases 2 and part of 3 of the athletic stipends that year. And then finally, in the current budget year, we did a 3% cost of living increase for all classified administrators and gave a $4,000 increase to the base teacher salary, and then moved the $2,500 of the locality supplement to the base salary that year. In addition, moving the max step from 25 to 26. You're going to see this again in the future, but Ms. Hamlin's staff did an analysis of the minimum teacher salary for across the state of South Carolina and ranked them of public school districts in South Carolina. We ranked number 1 in the starting teacher salary. We ranked number 1. Now, that doesn't count charter schools and private schools and that sort of thing, but that was our goal, and we met that goal. So the series of increases we're seeing here has accomplished that to put us in that number 1 spot. In addition, we did another 5% for bus drivers, did the step increases, and we moved another big line item was we moved substitute pay from $90 a day to $120 a day. That was a huge increase. And we hope that we'll see the results of those efforts this school year. Again, the $2,000 recruiting and retention bonus is going to be paid out in December of this year. We're going to have a compensation study, and that will be partially implemented. It'll be implemented in January for the last half a year. We finished our athletic stipend increases. We fully funded that plan. and added a extra sport of boys volleyball. And I can tell you, I've been to some games and they're pretty exciting. We've got some great things going on there. Sick leave payout, a half daily rate of retirement, payment of lapsed sick leave and vacation days. I mean, those are major developments in terms of salaries and benefits. And then, of course, mental health supports and free child care investor funds as well. So in total, you're looking at $62 million worth of increases in benefits and salaries and other compensation for our staff in the last 4 years. So it's pretty powerful there.
Comments?
Yeah.
Dr. Wisniewski. I'm sorry, Dr. Claus, the other doctor, two doctors.
You're fine. This is really great too. It's because it's hard to keep track of, we know, we've done this, we've done that, but to see it all together, all in one is great. And I'm glad you did that to one.
Yes, we did. Jennifer sent us an email.
That's okay.
Yeah. Like how much? I think it was $200. $500.
Remember, we were in the bottom half when we started.
Dr. Wisniewski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for your hard work on this and for putting it in a really organized way for us to be able to look back and see all the great work that was done. I really appreciate the time it took for you guys to put this together. My only comment would be, I hope that this one pager or whatnot goes into the future budget presentations just so that we can review it again. And I think it should kind of be one of those pages that's consistently reviewed so we can see where we've been and how far we've come.
Absolutely. Mr. Smith.
My question is, in terms of substitute pay, I noticed that you said that we paid a substitute $120. How does that work?
Our substitutes are contracted, so the ESS is the vendor, and ESS bills us when the teacher calls out, a sub is assigned, and that ESS provides a listing or an invoice to us of the days that are worked by the substitute and the individual that they're subbing for, so we know where to code the expense. And so that is received on a monthly basis, and we allocate it to the appropriate accounts and record it in our system and pay the bill.
In that part I get, but how do we determine in terms of what subs get paid if we're not the contractor?
We dictate the rate of pay to the contractor. So they have to pay that rate. We ask for it to be.
We set the rate that the contractors pay the substitutes. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Scherbinger, do you have anything?
No, I don't. Again, nice work.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I keep my little thing here. I keep my good stuff, I'll say stuff, file.
You're gonna run out of room.
Yeah.
And these 3 documents are going in there because this is the kind of stuff that I get questions about all the time. And now I've got 3 pages of great data that I can easily show to people. So this is really valuable. Really, thank you so much for the job. Really well done.
Rock star on this one. Good direction.
Okay, the next topic is future topics. I have a list of future topics proposed by Ms. Crosby. The next Finance Committee meeting on November 10th. There'll be this September 2022 $100,000 report, the September transparency report, Board of Education monthly budget report, ESSER update, FY 2023 first quarter financial report, and lastly, OE 18 monitoring report of school food and nutrition services. Is there any other proposed agenda topics?
Nothing from me.
I mentioned to Tanya before she came in that we got a briefing on the student faculty ratios in each school. And I would like to ask her if it would be possible to give us the total teachers' salaries in each school. That way we can take a look at the student faculty ratios and the total salaries for the number of teachers. We can find an average, and then we can tell, are our highest paid teachers teaching the fewest number of kids or the most number of kids? That's one of the pieces of data that initial report that Dr. Stratos did, and I mentioned it in the meeting 2 weeks ago, that's just the start of data. And this is the start of the financial, because there's a lot of other financial implications from that report to look at. Mr. Smith?
And also the same way how they gave us a outline of who works in finance in that department. Could we have a blueprint of the chain of command and who what, where, when, why, and how as well in finance as well?
You'd like to have an organization chart for the finance department, is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's reasonable. We just got one from ISD. Okay. Not hearing any other, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
So